Hi everyone, Martin here and welcome to the Inner Loop. So thanks for choosing this video to watch and let's dig into it. In this video we're going to talk about this. It's the microdrone. But before we can talk about the microdrone, we need to talk about this. But before we can talk about that, we need to revisit this. This board was the analog stage of project I called the Picodrone. The Picodrone was a sort of Raspberry Pi Pico based synthesizer. I got really carried away with it. It had a filter, it had 12 keys, it had a number of different voices, it even had a sequencer built in. The project was going well, but I never really got it to make any sounds that I really liked. And in the end, I think I diagnosed that I was very clever in creating a digital to analog converter using just these 10 or 12 resistors. Let's have a quick look at where this all went wrong. In my diagram here, I've got the wires coming out of the Raspberry Pi that represent the digital lines. This top line here is the most significant bit. This is the one line that changes the voltage most significantly. And then the bottom one here is the least significant bit. It's like the 0 on the end of the number. Like the 1. This is like the 10,000 and this is like the 1. And what I did is I had resistors of varying values. It started around 50 ohms and they had to double each time. So the last one was about 100k ohms. These all join together and out comes an analog voltage. And it actually worked. With 12 bits, it actually gives you a range of 4096 values. So there's 4096 values here, possible at the output. If you think, okay, that's probably enough about that. Let's suffice it to say that the method that I used to convert digital to analog sucked. And I spent all that time trying to make some really, really nice waveforms, but I couldn't because I didn't have an oscilloscope. What did I do? For Christmas, I bought myself an oscilloscope. The first thing I attempted with the oscilloscope was to get a Pico to create a square wave. And it looked almost within a few lines of code like this. One beautiful square wave. Change the frequency. And it even tells you, it's maybe not so easy to see, but it even tells you the frequency. The beauty of a tool like this is you can straight away see if your code that you've written is creating the output that you want. With the square wave tested, then that was really the end of the story, because I've tested the oscilloscope, but I've got some code. The code now on the Pico is producing a square wave of varying frequency. It occurred to me that, well, if one pin can go up and down and make a square wave, why not make, say, 8? I have 8 square waves and play them all together. I'll draw you a little picture of how I mix them together and what that sounds like. Well, I've got the 8 data lines, 1 to 8, coming out of the Raspberry Pi, and they have a voltage and a ground. They have a voltage level for a 1, it's about 3.3 volts, and for a 0, it's 0 volts. So the way I mixed them together was just to add a resistor. Exactly the same as I did before. And then just join them all up. V. Except this time, instead of being a multiple ladder going in multiples of 2, they're all the same value. And I think in this case I used, I don't know, 1 kilo ohm or something. which gives each oscillator an equal amount of voltage. So if all of these are at naught, and that one goes up to 3.3, then it'll just be 1/7, or it'll be 1/8 of 3.3 volts. If they all go up, then it will be the full 3.3 volts. So just a very simple mixer, giving all 8 oscillators the same ratio. So let's have a look at that, and as the oscillators go at different frequencies, let's see what that makes. I explained what you saw there in a short, but essentially what you saw was the oscillators all starting at the same frequency, and then their frequency drifting apart. And as their frequency drifts apart, you get all these kind of beating effects, and the waveform turns into sort of something that looks like a triangle. And then at the end, when the frequencies all come back together, because the waveforms are now out of phase, you don't actually end up with a square wave again. You end up with a sort of an odd shape. There we are. There's the example with say the green and the blue square waves, which have gone out of phase, but they're actually in time. And what you end up with when the green and the blue are together is now this interesting waveform that actually crosses the center line for a while. So now we've got 3 voltage levels. We've got 3.3, 0, and also 1.5 in the middle. And that's the final stage when they're out of phase. And this got me thinking. I got completely out of control with the Picodrone, because I wanted to have a sequencer, I wanted to have an envelope, I wanted to have 12 oscillators. It wanted to be all singing, all dancing. Microdrone, I've got 8 oscillators. I can sort of vary their frequency. I just had to have an envelope. I wanted to be able to press the button and go bing, bing, bing. But to have an envelope, you've got to vary the volume. And how do you vary the volume? Well, the only obvious way to do it is to use pulse width modulation. And with pulse width modulation, what you do is you make the amount of time that the square wave is on smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And as it gets smaller and smaller, the amount of sort of volume that you perceive becomes smaller. I was thinking about how to do that in software, and it's not too hard. You just have it on for less time than you have it off. You have it on for less time than you have it on, but it gives you that Atari kind of sort of 8-bit sound. Then it occurred to me that I could use this, because if these 2 waves are entirely out of phase, then their sum at all times will be 0. So off I went, and I added another 8 resistors, which gave me 16 oscillators. Each original 8 oscillator had another oscillator to go with it, which I could vary the phase. By varying the phase of the pairs of oscillators, I figured I could then actually reach a point where, just by varying the phase, I can have 0. I have 0. As one is going high, the other one's going low, and the other one's low. So what will happen then is it'll oscillate around 0, and I'll have nothing, and that gives me an envelope. So let's listen to that. It's currently powered off, and you can see the voltage is 0. I'm going to switch it on, and you see that it goes to the middle hovering about 1.5 volts. You can see there's an attack. So it builds up. And then the longer you hold it on, the longer the decay you get. Let's go crazy. So here it is, the microdrone. It hasn't got a back yet because it's still got some umbilical for programming it plugged in. But once it's fully finished, I'll put a back on it. The green resistors are the one lot of oscillators, 8 oscillators, and the black ones are the other lot. There's a switch here. This switch is really the key to the whole of this video, which I haven't really talked about. This is on. These oscillators are all oscillating, but they're actually out of phase so accurately that you can't hear anything. If I press this switch, it joins the two. It unjoins the two sets of oscillators, and as this is a stereo output, you'll hear the different oscillators out of phase on left and right speakers. You won't with this because I'm only doing it with the microphone, but I'll probably put some clips on the end with an actual direct input and you can listen to it on headphones. So I press this button, it splits from the 2 lots of 8 oscillators mixed together to 8 on the left and 8 on the right, out of phase. I should talk about the controls really. And this is the pitch knob, this is the sort of spread apart knob, and this is the envelope knob. So I press that. So that's like our key. And here's the frequency. And here's the spread. If I press this button, this one here, this one, it'll split apart the 2 oscillators, the 2 sets of oscillators, and you'll hear a continuous tone. If I press the envelope button in that mode, all you'll actually hear is a phase shift. This has turned into a long video, and it was really all about this mixture of 2 lots of 8 oscillators. That was really what fascinated me, was that by mixing them together, if you did that with an analog instrument, the phase wouldn't make any difference. But because it's a digital instrument, they're perfectly out of phase and therefore add up perfectly to 0, and you hear nothing. It's turned into a long video, so thank you very much for watching. And in part 2, I'm going to talk about the circuit diagram and the code that goes with this. And if you want to, you can build your own.